There's one specific beautiful day in private equity that comes only once a year that every PE investor looks forward to more than their own birthdays: bonus day. On that day, you're wired hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all of the grinding, the 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. days, and the existential dread of is this all worth it disappears, at least for that day. So what is it like to actually make all that money, and what do you do with it? That's what I'll be going over in today's video. I interviewed a Wharton MBA friend who worked at one of the top Megafund PE firms in New York. So no, this isn't based on some AI slop, but real numbers based on pay stubs and credit card bills that we went through together. And I'll be going over how much my friend made while working in PE, how that money was used, and two interesting takeaways from our conversation. Now, before we jump into it, if you're watching this video because you're interested in breaking into private equity, you may want to check out the PE Investing Certificate program being offered by Wall Street Prep and Wharton. This program is sponsored by top firms like Blackstone, Carlyle, and KKR, and over 8 weeks, you can learn at your own pace through this online course that's taught by Wharton professors, Wall Street Prep's PE program director, and real PE investors including David Rubenstein, the founder of Carlyle, and Martin Brand, the head of North America Private Equity at Blackstone, who will cover topics like the PE deal process, valuation, how to think like a private equity professional, and more. By completing the program, you also unlock access to the alumni member database, fireside chats with PE investors, and exclusive networking events with the world's top private equity recruiters. This program runs 3 times a year, and be sure to use my code rareliquid to get up to $500 off, and I'll leave information for everything discussed in this video's description. Alright, with that said, let's start by diving into the numbers of what my friend made as a third-year associate. Starting off with her base salary, she made $230,000, which comes out to $19,167 a month pre-tax, not bad. And she was taxed at a 38% tax rate, so she took home $11,900 or so each month. Next, her performance bonus was 100% of her base, so $230,000. And on that, she paid about $84,200 in taxes, which is about a rate of 37%. And so she took home about $146,000 of her bonus. As a fun little side note, you're a third-year PE associate around the age of 26 or 27 if you go straight from 2 years of banking into private equity, which is kind of the normal route. So it really is wild to think about what that must have felt like to be wired this huge amount of money, but a lot of people are wired this kind of money during their performance days when they work in finance. But anyway, in total, she made $460,000 pre-tax, paid about $171,000 in taxes, and took home a pretty decent $289,000. And it's crazy, even using this post-tax figure, it puts her in the top 2 to 3% of earners in the United States. Alright, so we talked about the money flowing in. Now let's talk about the money flowing out. And this is where I think you're going to be in for a big surprise. One thing to know about my friend is that she calls herself a money hoarder in jest, because ever since she was young, when people asked her what she wanted to be, she would just say, retired. And her spending really reflects that, and I was surprised to see how frugal she was. So let's go into her budget and how she spent the $11.9 thousand she earned post-tax each month, starting from the lowest to highest expenses. She had a $13 Peloton membership, utilities that were just at $67 a month. After that came $163 for transportation, which were just lifts, and finally about $193 on travel for that particular month. For food, she only spent $534 for the month, all spent on eating out. Her firm paid her seamless lunches and dinners, and because she lived near her parents, she wouldn't need to get groceries and didn't really have much time for cooking anyway. That was honestly pretty much it for expenses, because the next biggest ones were all investments and rent. 2.3K went into her 401k each month, 3.1K went to pricey New York rent, which was her main monthly splurge, and then the remaining 5.5K or so went into low-cost diversified index funds like the S&P 500, QQQ, and industry-specific ETFs. With all this said, she said while this was a pretty representative month for her, there were times when she would splurge on treating her parents, getting a fancy dinner with friends, and on nice vacations. But even those vacations, a lot of the travel would be paid for through points accumulated from traveling at work. And so she would save a lot of money even there as well. So stepping back from all the numbers, there were 2 broader takeaways from my conversation with her that really stood out. First, I found it really interesting that if you watched my video with my friend who earned $400,000 from banking in SF, she was also pretty frugal and didn't spend much money either, and neither did I when I was in banking. So this just made me realize more and more that people with intense finance jobs honestly just don't have a lot of time to spend their money. I remember back when I was working in banking, working from Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to past midnight. And so the only times I could really spend money were Friday night to Sunday, but I would spend a lot of times working weekends as well. One line that my friend said during our chat that I thought was pretty funny was that she said that the work in PE is interesting, there's just a lot of it. So it's pretty ironic and I think unexpected, where most people think that these people working in finance must be making a ton of money and just blow it all away. But in actuality, they barely even have enough time to actually use it and live pretty normal, frugal lives. The second interesting thing I kind of took away from our conversation was a financial benefit that most people don't know outside of private equity called co-invest. PE firms allow their employees to invest their own money into a private equity fund. And this may sound like a scam if you're like, hold up, a company pays an employee who then uses that money to pay the company. But let me explain why this is a benefit. If you work at a solid PE firm, you can expect it to earn at least 15% return each year, which is much higher than the 8 to 10% the S&P 500 returns on average. And you're also diversifying your investments to not be dependent on the public markets, so it really kills two birds with one stone. In addition, while outside investors need to pay the private equity firm fees on their returns, which is typically called 2 and 20, co-invest doesn't require those fees. So you're basically able to invest in a private equity fund for free, which is a huge plus. My friend committed around $200,000 to co-invest, but this money isn't all asked for at once. And instead, whenever the PE fund invests in a company, then her capital gets called and she'll sell some of her stock to invest something around $5 to tens of thousands of dollars into the fund. Alright, so that wraps up the video. Hope you enjoyed this one. And before I let you go, to break into PE, you first need to break into banking. And if that's you and that's what you're interested in doing, I recently put all of my best advice into a 15-part email newsletter that covers every step of the banking recruiting process, from networking to behaviorals to technicals, all of it completely for free. If you're interested, sign up on rareliquid.com or scan the QR code on the screen. That said, thank you so much as always for watching and hope to catch you in the next one.